Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. So glad to have you along with us as we continue our weekly 3-hour adventure into the history and tradition of the great outdoors, the great outdoor lifestyle here in the great state of Michigan and occasionally beyond. So what's going on right now in the world, in the outdoor world, since we last talked? Well, I can tell you one thing. Since we last talked, the weather has changed. We were watching my granddaughter's softball games last week wearing winter coats and blankets, and I was at a softball game last night in shorts and a T-shirt. So isn't that nice? I like it because it makes the turkeys more cooperative. It makes them gobble a little bit more. It makes them a little bit more active, although I'm still having my struggles. I am really learning to appreciate the May season. Although the mosquitoes haven't been bad. The last time I was out, I saw my first mosquito, and it was not a problem. They will be soon. That's why God invented thermocells. You didn't know God invented thermocells, did you? Yeah, they're the real deal. They certainly do the job. I don't have my bird yet. I'm still continuing to play cat and mouse. I told you last week that I thought I had access to the property just to the east of my buddy Doug's farm. Thank you, Doug, for letting me hunt there, where the birds are roosting. It turns out that was not the case. I can have access southeast, but that's not getting me where I need to go. I need to be up in the northeast, the north end, where the birds are roosting, and I think it'll change my strategy. But I can still continue to hunt Doug's farm. There are birds there. The last time I was out, I had a bird gobbling on the roost to the north of me, and I had a bird gobbling on the roost southeast of me. And since it was going to be a warmer day, I thought, okay, maybe these birds are going to be a little more vocal, because my experience this season has been they've been pretty quiet. I mean, real quiet, like maybe gobble a little bit on the roost, and once they hit the ground, just shut up for the entire morning. Maybe the entire day. I don't know. I don't sit out there the entire day. Maybe I should. So this time, though, they gobbled their heads off on the roost. They hit the ground and continued to gobble. And I said, okay, here we go. In front of me, now I'm sitting in that Primal Tree Stands Wraith 270 see-through blind, which is my go-to favorite blind in the world. You can get one, by the way. Go to primaltreestands.com, use the promo code Avery, and you get one for under $200. Pretty good deal, if I do say so myself. And in front of me, I had a couple of decoys. I had a hen decoy set down low on the ground, and I had a Jake decoy in semi-strut behind her. And the thinking is that a longbeard, a big tom, a gobbler, would see that and go, oh, man, there's a Jake there, and he's moving in on my territory, and he's not going to like that. It didn't work, and I wonder, after the fact, I got thinking, I wonder if the reason it didn't work is that I have not seen a Jake on that property this year, which does have me concerned for the future. You know, turkey numbers are a concern across the country and also some parts of Michigan. Now, yes, I realize that there are a lot of pockets of the state, a lot of parts of the state where turkey numbers are just like they ever were, just as many birds as there ever were. You know, you might see multiple longbeards in a morning's hunt. You might hear a whole bunch of birds gobbling. As you drive down the road midday, you might see, sorry about this, I got something, everything's in bloom right now, right? Everything's coming out, and the allergies in my system tend to be irritated this time of year, so I apologize for that. But where I'm hunting, I know that there are 2 longbeards and quite a few hens and not one jake. I have not heard a jake gobble, because when jakes gobble, you will know it. And I have not called in one jake or flock of jakes, which if you have hunted birds before and had experience with jakes, and a jake is an immature, they're a bearded male bird, so they're a legal target, but they're not the big longbeards, the big birds that most people go after. There's nothing wrong with shooting a jake. Nothing wrong with shooting a jake at all, if that's what you want to do. Completely legal. But if there are jakes in the area, you will probably know it because you'll hear them gobbling in a group, in a flock. They tend to hang together, and they don't put out these big, long gobbles. It's kind of a shortened gobble. And you will call them into your decoys. And they'll come in like a bunch of adolescent boys, a bunch of teenage boys, like falling all over themselves and gobbling their heads off, and they don't know which end is up. You know, it's been a few years, but I remember what that was like. But there's no jakes there. So that morning, I did see the bird to the north of me. He dropped down in the field, and he was strutting and gobbling, and he did respond to my calls, but I couldn't get him to come in. The bird that was gobbling on the roost to the southeast of me, I never did see. But I continue again to play cat and mouse with these things. I've got till the end of the month. That's why I say I'm now a big fan of the May season. I used to joke with people who would love the May season. I said, I hate that mosquito season. Well, now I'm growing to like it because the birds tend to be more cooperative, more receptive to calling as the month goes on. As more and more of the hens spend more of their time sitting on the nest and they're not, accessible to the toms, they get frustrated and they start wandering around and responding to everything. Well, that's my hope. That's my hope. I'm almost glad that I haven't shot a bird yet because my boat's not ready yet. My Angler Quest isn't ready yet. If I knew that brand new Angler Quest was ready to rock and ready to put on the water, I wouldn't be interested in turkey hunting. I'd be wanting to go fishing. But the fact that it's not done yet, okay, I can spend a couple of more weeks fishing. I talked, turkey hunting. I talked to Brad Dupuis at Angler Quest just the other day, and he said they're working on it. And like everything else in the world these days, things take more time. Now, at Angler Quest, at Apex Marine, that wonderful Michigan-based company that makes the Quest pontoons, the Angler Quest boats, and they also bought Polar Craft boats a couple of years ago. They don't make those in Michigan. Those are still made in Indiana. But the thing about Angler Quest is they pride themselves, and rightfully so, in making almost every component for that boat in-house. I mean, they make their own furniture. They sew their own furniture. They weld their own tubes. I mean, they make these things in St. Louis, Michigan. But they have to go outside. They have to outsource some things like electronics, like motors, like gas tanks. And so they're at the mercy of the supply chain that we hear so much about. But Brad assures me it's on the way. So I will be patient. I will be patient. Don't forget, though, that May is the time to apply for your Michigan Bear and your Michigan Elk tag. We talked about this last week, and I will talk about it next week, and I will remind you every week in the month of May. Because it's not one of those things like, if you forget to apply for a turkey tag, you can go buy one over the counter. I think there are a few hunts in the western UP where you might be able to do that on bear. Don't quote me. But for the most part, if you don't put in for a bear or certainly an elk tag, you're not going to get one. There's nothing left over. It doesn't happen that way. I will apply again for my elk tag, knowing full well I will not get it. Because I'm going to be stubborn and continue to apply for a bull-only tag, which is probably stupid. I know it's probably stupid. Your odds are increased if you apply for a cow tag, because they give more of them out. But when I used to MC the registration or the orientation meeting for the hunts, the elk hunts, every year, there was somebody or maybe several somebodies who got their bull elk tag after applying for just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So it can happen. And you know that I'm putting in for the 3rd season in Newberry. And I will get that hunt this year. I'll be hunting with my buddy Johnny Bowler. Some promo codes I want to make you aware of. MichiganBrand.net. Use the promo code Mike21. Get 20% off everything on the website. BrentonUSA.com. Use the promo code Avery. Get $100 off on one of those beautiful Brenton USA AR-style hunting rifles. Extremely accurate. MUCC.org. Use the promo code Mike, all caps. Get 25% off on your first time signing up. And PrimalTreeStands.com. Use the promo code Avery. Again, discounts on everything on the website, including that beautiful Wraith 270 see-through ground blind. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, after the break, Keith DeWald of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, talking about a post he put online that has a lot of people concerned, and not rightfully so, in my opinion. I think it's been overblown, and I think Keith is going to agree with me on that. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews wraps up the hour. In hour number 2, Cody Norton, the Michigan DNR's bear expert, talking about the bear point system and bears in Michigan. Dr. Megan Moriarty on avian flu, bird flu. Is it a big deal or not? The Ask Avery segment, the DNR is collecting heads from road-killed deer in southwest Michigan and leaving the carcasses there, at least they were. And in our 3rd hour, Dan Harrington from the United Deer Farmers of Michigan talking about deer farms, captive cervid farms. He said that's a story we should know more about. And, of course, we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. That's coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry and WMBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. For more info, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. Beautiful facilities, a great launch right there. If you're coming in from out of town, launch at Linwood Beach Marina, go straight east, and you will find fish. It's as easy as that. Wonderful campground, a full marine shop, just great people. linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. My history with that Saginaw Bay walleye fishery goes way, way, way back. I was working in the local TV news department when this whole thing was going on about stocking fish, and I followed it very closely, and I've been a big proponent of that fishery. In fact, going back years and years and years, I started something called the News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit. And at the time, this was an attempt to take all of these local community walleye tournaments and combine them into something better, something bigger, where we could all work together and promote the resource and the fishery as a whole. That went on for a couple of years and was quite successful, but I stepped aside in hopes that eventually somebody would come along and pick it up, and they did. Now, one of the guys I worked with early on was a guy named Keith DeWald. Keith was my guy in Au Gres as part of the News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit. Unfortunately, Keith is gone, but his son, Keith, is with us, and he is the president of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, and that club is the group that now runs the Michigan Walleye Tour, which takes that whole concept of the old News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit and just blows it up into something more. And Keith is with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Keith, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Hey, I'm doing real good, real good. So listen, your history, your family history, your personal history in that fishery goes back to when you were a kid.
Yeah, I remember years ago when you were around and helping my dad on the walleye ponds in Au Gres when I was just a young guy and back in the 80s.
And you look at what this fishery has developed into. Isn't it a great story?
Oh, it's huge. It's unbelievable. You can go on down to sit there, and everyone can go out from Au Gres, Tawas, Linwood, and just just have a ball with fishing with your family and, you know, your kids and taking out people. It's unbelievable.
And how is this early season fishery stacking up? What's it looking like?
Oh, it's beautiful this year. We've gone out of Auguray and go out and get your limits and have fun. And all my buddies and charter guys down towards Linwood are just doing absolutely fabulous on the fish this year.
Keith, you made a post a couple of weeks ago that got a lot of attention, and I'm not sure that it got the type of attention that you were looking for. Tell me that story.
Well, we were out fishing about 3 weeks ago on a Sunday, and a few of us were out here at Point Lookout, and one of the guys that fished alongside me, he caught quite a few fish, went in. Then I went in, and while I was cleaning my fish, he sent me a picture, and on that picture was a fish that was very discolored, and he asked me, what do you think's wrong with this fish? And I said, I'm not sure. I said, I would like to look at the pictures and stuff on it. And well, I said, do not eat the fish. And he threw it away. And a couple days later, I talked to some biologists about it and just told him how the fish was rock hard and it felt like concrete. Everything looked perfect on the outside of that fish, but just by grabbing the outside, you could tell something was wrong with that fish. My whole reason for coming up with the pictures and posting it was, hey, as if anybody catches one of these fish, can you please give it to us so we can take it to the biologist and see what's wrong with this fish. It's not a scare. Our fish population is perfect, is doing well. We just want to find out what was wrong with that kind of fish if anyone does catch one.
Sure. And as the way the world goes and social media and news goes, I think it did get blown into something like I got emails from people saying, should I not make my trip? Should I quit fishing? Should we cancel our event? Well, the answer, of course, is no.
Yeah, not at all. Us, even with the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, you know, we want to make sure that our fish population is thriving. It does so good for our communities around the Saginaw Bay. There's nothing to be alarmed about whatsoever. You're looking at, 4 out of millions and millions of fish in Lake Huron.
Okay, you mentioned 4. We were talking about one fish out of Auguray. Where'd the other 3 come from, Keith?
They were out of Lake Huron. We did not get the exact location through guys, but they were out of the whole Lake Huron. No more in Saginaw Bay.
Well, it will. I mean, I actually hope somebody does catch one of those and get it to the right people, the biologists or whatever, so we can see, what that was.
Yeah, and that's our whole hopes. It's just let's see what it is wrong with that fish. That the DNR are ready. Soon as someone calls and they call the DNR, one of us at the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club is a DNR field officer. We'll come grab that fish and give it to the biologist, and it goes right to Michigan State University.
Well, along that line then, I mean, I don't like giving out phone numbers and stuff on the air, but if somebody does catch one of these fish, if they go to SaginawBayWalleyeClub.com, can they learn, how to get in touch with the right people?
Yes, they can, and my phone number's on the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. So it's nice we just want to figure out what was wrong with that fish.
Yeah.
There's not, I mean, we've caught hundreds and hundreds of fish out here already, and us with doing the Michigan Walleye Tour, we haven't had one of these fish come in. But if one of them do happen to come in, let's get it studied.
Have you ever figured out, or even taken a minute to wonder, how many fish you guys handle in a season of the Walleye Tour?
Oh, thousands. And we are a dead fish tournament, but we donate all of our fish to, the last 2 years have been the veterans. We've cleaned the fish and given to the veterans. And when you're looking at literally, a couple thousand fish per tournament, we've never come across anything like this.
What's the relationship between your club, Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, and the Michigan Walleye Tour?
So we have the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, which we have a whole membership with anybody that fishes the Michigan Walleye Tour is a member of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. And with the club, we try and go out, help kids, help other organizations, work with the kids in scholarships and stuff like that. But then we also, to raise money for the club, we put on the Michigan Walleye Tour. We have our own committee on that, so none of us on the board have a part of the committee process, and they work very hard to go all over from city to city, and we go and put big tournaments on.
In thinking about the early days of that club and the early groups in Au Gres and Caseville and Sebring, it was a really cool project to see, because it wasn't just the DNR that did this. It was the DNR and sportsmen's groups around the bay that, in my opinion, made this fishery what it is today.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I know a lot of them have shut down, but like the Aranet County Walleye Club are still going, and they still plant walleye fry in different inland lakes even today.
Well, okay, that leads me to my next question. When you said some of these clubs have shut down, I was thinking, well, that makes sense because you're not stocking Saginaw Bay anymore, so you don't need the rearing ponds, which was a big part of what these clubs did at one time.
Huge, huge part. I mean, you're looking at thousands and thousands of fish coming out of, Tawas and Au Gres and Linwood and stocking out here in Saginaw Bay and Lake Huron. But now the ones that still do stock in these rearing ponds, they get to go to inland lakes, Hubbard Lake, lakes all over that the DNR still work with them for.
So Saginaw Bay is completely on her own. Mother Nature's taking care of this now. There's no fish going in there from man.
No, there has been nobody that has put fish in here for many years.
Well, again, I mean, a body of water that at one time was overfished commercially and was dirty has now cleaned up, and we've got a world-class walleye fishery. It's a great conservation success story, along with Lake Erie and Detroit River and Michigan's walleye fishery on the big water in general.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable, and we get to see it a lot more.
I'm losing Keith. We got a bad. I'm going to ask you that.
Now.
Yeah, that's much better now. So you said that, or I said it's, it's amazing what this fishery has become. A big water fishery in Michigan. It's world class.
It is, and when you look at how far these fish travel anymore, we know these fish with the chips in them go from Lake Huron all the way over to Lake Michigan and all the way down. We started this year in our tournament series in Detroit. This weekend we go to Bowles Harbor, where we know from Bowles Harbor we'll be fishing Ohio and Lake Erie and in Canada. And it's unbelievable to see the different types of fish that we have.
You talk about these chipped fish and tagged fish as well. I mean, obviously, if an angler catches a tagged fish, you know it, you see it. I was out with the grandkids a couple of years ago. We caught a tagged fish, and there was a $100 tag, so it made their day. What about these chipped fish? Do you know if you catch one of those?
Yes, they still have tags in them where they say that they're $100, and then when you clean a lot of them fish, there is it's a little bit bigger than a pencil and about 3 inches long. And all that does is monitor the fish wherever they go to, and that's how you can tell where them fish go with the different sensors all over. And they're doing it with many fish other than walleyes now, but it is neat. I have caught 2 of those fish, and it's pretty neat to see where that fish has.
Again, Keith. Okay, we lost it again for a second. So what? I'm going to follow up more on this, Keith. We got to take a break. Can you give me a few more minutes? Keith, I'm going to say your answer is yes, even though I couldn't hear you. And I'm going to suggest that wherever you are, if you can move just a few feet or something, because toward the end there, Keith, we were really losing it. It was breaking up bad. We're talking with Keith DeWald, the president of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. Their website, SaginawBayWalleyeClub.com, SaginawBayWalleyeClub.com. Saginaw Bay Walleye Club was one of the first sportsmen's groups to be formed around Saginaw Bay to develop and promote that walleye fishery. I worked with Keith's dad in the early days for the old News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit. He was instrumental in helping to develop the Saginaw Bay Walleye fishery, and now Keith Jr., if I can call him that, is following in his dad's footsteps. I think it's a very cool story. We'll take a break, talk more with him after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. Let's go north of the bridge once again. Let's go to the Sioux, ESPN 1400, News Talk 1400, WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Rapid River Knives. As always, I've got a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now. I carry that thing all the time. I'm proud to carry it. I use it. I mean, honestly, I find myself reaching for this knife several times a day. And I just enjoy the fact that it is a Michigan-based product, handmade by craftsmen in the UP at Rapid River Knives. Check out their website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us, or stop by the showroom and you'll see what I mean. They make folding pocket knives, they make hunting knives, skinning knives, they make kitchen knives, they make fillet knives. You might want to use one of their fillet knives to clean a walleye. Maybe a Saginaw Bay walleye. Again, rapidriverknifeworks.us. And the reason I make that transition is we're talking with Keith DeWald, who is the president of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. Originally, the reason for this contact was to talk about a post that Keith put up there about a discolored Saginaw Bay walleye that really got a lot of attention online. And Keith, again, just to reiterate, that your intent was not to sound an alarm that there's a problem out there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we just wanted to see what was going on with fish like that. Our fish population is doing extremely well in Saginaw Bay.
Will the bay ever reach the level of Lake Erie?
I don't believe so. We have more fish, I believe, than Lake Erie. Down there, they have a lot more bait, and that's why their fish are so big. And I head there in a couple hours, actually. We have a tournament down there, and that's where I'll be for the next 5 days, is playing around in Lake Erie.
Well, that'll be fun, right? I mean, it's always nice to get down to Erie.
Yeah, yes, it is.
How is that fishery, and how is your approach on Lake Erie any different or the same from Saginaw Bay?
Saginaw Bay is so much clearer. Our color choice, for when I fish up here, my color choice is a lot more natural colors. When you go to Lake Erie, you try and find water where you can see actually your cavitation plate, and you use bright colors. Totally different fishery as far as, how I go at it as an angler. But it's a ball down there, and it is up here too.
And well, and I go back to the early days of the Saginaw Bay walleye fishery when it was new, and to be honest, people didn't know how to fish them yet. We were all learning at the same time. We were looking to the guys from Minnesota and Wisconsin to help us out. And in the early days in Saginaw Bay, you trolled 1/4-ounce Hottentots, and you caught all the fish you wanted. You can still catch fish, obviously, these days with Hottentots, but the fishery has evolved. And, Keith, I think that the fishing tactics have evolved. What's the hot technique out there these days?
Oh, you're exactly right. On my boat, most of the time, I will run like a Spro Mad-Eye, or a Bandit is very, very good with crankbaits. 99% of the time on my boat, that's what I use as a crankbait. It's nice when them fish come and they grab it, and you know how those little fish, they'll swipe at it, and when you have a crawler, you have to check that crawler every single time.
Yeah.
If they swipe, and it's nice now running like that, and everybody has customs and this and that. It's fun, and like you said, back in the day, you use your paws or your Erie Dearies. And that's all I remember is Hottentots. My boat's still loaded with Hottentots, just in case.
Just in case.
I mean, my dad had thousands and thousands of them, and you have to have them on there. But it's definitely changed since way back then.
Oh, you mentioned paws. Boy, that's a term I haven't heard of in years either.
Yeah, we still have them. I still keep them on my boat just in case. You never know.
Have you experimented with spoons much, Keith?
I have. I used spoons a lot in the inner bay with mini divers, mini dipsies, and they do work very, very well. And to go out and just catch fish, they work awesome. Work great. I have found personally myself that I like the crankbaits. I can usually go way north where I'm out of the bay in tournament season and catch a few bigger fish. I don't catch the numbers, but I catch some bigger fish.
Well, Keith, listen, before we let you go, I want to let you put a plug in for the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. Why would somebody want to become a member?
You know, we help out so much in our community and other communities. We donate a lot of our time. A lot of good guys are in this club. We put on a Meet the Pros night at every place we go to. Every kid gets a fishing pole. We put on classes for kids. They get to go through our boats. We just helped stock some ponds up by Traverse City. We bought the fish for kids to fish and have fun. We just bought, I think, 40 or 50 fishing poles for Frank and Moose so they could put on some clinics for kids. And we're all around trying everything for our community and even giving scholarships around to our local kids.
Well, Keith DeWald of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, keep up the good work. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And good luck down there on Erie.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
It's Keith DeWald of Saginaw Bay Walleye Club. The website, SaginawBayWalleyeClub.com, SaginawBayWalleyeClub.com. From there, you can also get to the Michigan Walleye Tour website. Real pleasure. Talking with Keith and kind of coming full circle and remembering his dad and how we worked together years ago on this concept of, can't we bring all these local tournaments together and do something to promote the resource as a whole? And look where it is now, 35 years later with the Michigan Walleye Tour. We'll take a break. When we come back, Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. You can hear us on the other side of the state in Tawas, WIOS 1480 AM and 106.9 FM. And let's go north of the bridge. Let's go to Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Brenton USA Hunting Rifles. AR-style, highly accurate, tough, and dependable hunting rifles that could change the way you hunt. They're made in Lansing, just down the road from the governor's office, which I think makes it even cooler. Check them out online at BrentonUSA.com, BrentonUSA.com. By the way, you can use the promo code Avery and get $100 off on one of the Brenton USA AR-style, highly accurate, tough, dependable hunting rifles. That's BrentonUSA.com. While you're online, please check out the website, woods-n-waternews.com. That, of course, the website of Michigan's premier outdoor publication, Woods and Water News. Tom Campbell with us once again. Tom, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
So listen, as we're talking now, the big news in the outdoors, at least one of the news stories, is the change in the weather. It finally got nice out.
Can you believe that? Absolutely. Now maybe our May cover that was out there for 30 days already with the morels on it might finally come true here. But,
it's hard enough. And you and I have talked about this before. It's hard enough for me keeping tracks of things on a week-to-week basis because you don't know what Mother Nature is going to bring. You got to deal.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, how far in advance? Months in advance?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. About 45 days, sort of. With the starting of the next year's show, like right now, we're finishing up our June, which, as we speak, should be hitting the newsstands where your listeners could pick it up this weekend. So
what is the target? What's the target date each month when you want to get the new issue out?
If it was a perfect even calendar, we'd love to hit that 15th of every month. To kind of right in the middle, and that gives you 2 weeks in May for the June issue, and then you got 2 more weeks in the June issue, and it seems to work out real well and keep everybody fresh and up to date, and they know what to expect. But like you said, it's always tough with the weather conditions change.
Yeah.
But everybody should know everything about morels, so they should be out there this weekend and finding tons and tons of them, I would hope.
So what's in that June issue?
That June issue is going to be loaded. Of course, it's June, so we've got a great lineup of fishing stories. Kenny Darwin kicks it off about bluegill fishing, how we love our bluegill fishing, and he's talking about big bluegills and where to find big bluegills. So you want to check that out. And then we turn to walleyes. Of course, everybody, it's just still Walleye's got to be right up there. Michigan is the number one fish, and Mark Romanek talks about them. Mark Martin has some information about them. Mike Natkowski has some great information about walleye fishing, and it's all in there. And then we flip over to bass, and Dave Minar, who's always in his kayak looking for ways to catch large or smallmouth bass. He's got some a new old bait that he's suggesting bass fishermen use in this issue as well. So
the Yak Master, Dave Minar, the Yak Master.
You got it, absolutely, you got it. And of course, we've still got some great big buck stories in there. And Adam Lewis, who's a young man who's really making a name for himself in that deer hunting world, did a fantastic piece for June about finding a new hunting spot for you next fall, and some tips and tactics and things you can do and things you should look at doing, and real informational pack. And people that are looking for a new place to hunt will love that information and that story as well.
Is there a month that doesn't have a deer hunting story in it these days?
No, not in Michigan. I don't think so. It's funny. You'll get an email and go, "Oh, hey, I got this buck that it scored about 155, 160. Would you like this story?" And we, of course, we would like that story. Everybody would like to hear that story. So, yeah, Mike, it's fantastic. They just keep coming.
Hey, have you had a chance? Well, you put the magazine together. You're already starting on the Woods and Water show, the big outdoor weekend. Have you had a chance to get out and do anything fun, Tom?
4 months. Absolutely, Mike. I've been out chasing those turkeys, and pretty typical. They turn me inside out. And, as you get older, they keep saying you get more patience. But, man, oh, man, every time I move when I shouldn't move, I think they're here when they're there. And of course, the classic Mike Saturday morning, I was out chasing them all morning. Great hunts, always exciting. Pull into my driveway, go in the house, hit the refrigerator, look out in the back window. 3 monster toms standing in my backyard, as if to say, "The joke's on you, man." So,
they are so good at that, and they can be so stupid and so easy to kill, and then other times they make you look like an absolute fool. And I think that's one of the big appeals, Tom, is we don't know what kind of a bird we're chasing on a given day.
Exactly right, Mike. Those 3 went around my house and went back out to the road, and I backed up in my truck, and they just walked down the side of the road. I'd really never seen that before, and then they stepped into the ditch line and just followed, and I followed along with my truck, and they weren't worried at all.
No,
they must have knew me, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, I love/hate those stupid things.
That's right.
All right, Tom. Always a pleasure. I'll have people keep an eye out for the June edition, and you and I will talk again in a couple of weeks.
All right. Sounds great, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Well, you as well. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, the website woods-n-waternews.com, woods-n-waternews.com. Coming up after the break here at the top of the hour, we're going to talk a little bear hunting in Michigan. As I say, it's not bear hunting season, no, but it is the time to apply for your bear tag. We're going to talk with Cody Norton about how that system works and bears in Michigan in general. Dr. Megan Moriarty of the DNR on the avian flu situation. And this week's Ask Avery segment talks about collecting CWD deer heads in southwest Michigan, coming up in hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Yes, indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, here for 3 hours each week, celebrating the history and tradition of the outdoor lifestyle, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, wildlife issues, conservation issues, wild game cooking. And it's a pleasure to have you along with us. And I say radio show, right? And maybe this is just something I do to make myself feel better. Maybe it probably doesn't matter, but I do it to make myself feel better. And to try to get to encourage you to listen to the radio show on your local radio station. That's my bread and butter, right? Everybody's got a podcast, and I've got podcasts all over the place. But the Outdoor Magazine radio show is designed and recorded and scheduled and syndicated and distributed as a radio show. And the best way to listen, I think, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. If your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, there is the podcast version of the show available. You can hear it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, my Facebook page, everywhere you can hear podcasts, from Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, Odyssey, Apple, YouTube. I even put it up on YouTube. Regardless, though, of how you are hearing my voice, I do certainly appreciate it. There's a lot of content out there you can be listening to these days. There aren't many outdoor radio shows, but there are a lot of podcasts, outdoor podcasts, and there's some very good ones as well. So the fact that you have taken time out of your busy schedule, taken time out of your life to spend some time and check in with what's going on here in the Outdoor Magazine radio show, I can't thank you enough. I do really appreciate it. As I've been saying here for the last couple of weeks, and will continue for the next couple of weeks, May is the time, well, it's time for a lot of things. It's a time for turkey hunting. It's a time for walleye fishing. It's a time for trout fishing. It's a time for early salmon and trout in the big lakes. It's time for bass fishing. And it's time to apply for your Michigan bear and elk tag. You know, if you listen to the show at all, you know that bear hunting is one of my absolute favorite things to do in the world. People ask me why. Well, they say, well, aren't you afraid? And I will be honest, the first couple of times I bear hunted, I was nervous because I'd never done it before. I mean, it is a predator. They can be a carnivore. They eat meat. They eat everything, but they eat meat too. They got claws. They got teeth. I quickly learned that, no, if a bear sees you in the woods, they're going to run away. But the thing I like about bear hunting is it's so unique and so different. Where I live in the central part of the state, I can see deer, and I do see deer every day. And every time I see a deer, I love it. They're a cool critter. But I don't see bears very often. So every time I'm in the woods or the bush in Canada in a blind and a bear comes sneaking into a bait, I don't care if it's a little bear or a big bear, it's a special treat. And I love it. Cody Norton is a guy who has a real interesting and a close relationship with bears as well. He is the DNR's, let's bring him on here, Pat. Cody, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good. Listen, what's your official title there at the DNR?
Yeah, I'm the large carnivore specialist. So I work with bears, wolves, and cougars.
That's a pretty cool job right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about bears, though. Well, first of all, hey, listen, I hear you're going north to hunt with my buddy Ron St. Louis up in Ontario this year.
I am. A few weeks from now, yeah, I'll be heading up to Ontario Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters and looking forward to it on your recommendation.
Well, I gave him a heads up. I said, this guy Cody who's coming up is the big guy in Michigan for bears. Don't let that intimidate you, Ron. So I set the bar pretty high for you up there, Cody.
Great.
And one of the things I love about hunting up there, aside from the people and a lot of bears, is you can buy a tag over the counter. For a guy like me who loves to bear hunt, I got to be honest, Cody, our Michigan bear system can be very frustrating. How does it work? How do we get a bear tag here in Michigan?
Absolutely. So, we have a lot more demand for bear licenses than our population can really sustain with our current, regulations and hunting season length. So I think for last year we had almost 61,000 people apply for 7,000 licenses.
Wow.
So because of that, we had to, in 1990, actually developed a preference point lottery system, which means that for each bear management unit and hunt period, the people with the highest number of preference points get awarded licenses first on down the line until we run out of licenses for that unit. So then anyone who doesn't get awarded a license gets a preference point that they can use the next year.
So you get a point a year every year you apply?
Yes.
Until you get a tag and then it resets?
Yep, exactly. And there are opportunities, typically only in the Berglund unit for the third hunt period, but occasionally other times, you could buy a leftover license. And if you do that, it does reset your points as well. So that's something for folks to be aware of.
I was wondering about that. I brought that up earlier in the show that in general, bear tags are not like turkey tags in that you can almost always buy a leftover tag. There may be some some tags in the far western UP, but don't count on it.
Yes, absolutely.
So the process is you can go into a licensed agent, or I suggest going online because it's so much easier. Michigan.gov/DNR, put in for your tag, and I think it's a $5 charge, I think something like that, isn't it, Cody?
Yes, yep, $5 to apply.
And then we've got the month of May to do this. When will you guys announce the drawing results?
Yep, so May 1st to June 1st is the application, and then July 5th we'll have the results available online. And something for folks to keep in mind, too, is you have to have your base license purchased in order to buy your bear license. So every year we get some calls from folks. I got drawn for a bear license, and I can't buy it. What's going on? So make sure you get your base license first.
Well, and as soon as they get that base license, they would be able to buy the bear tag, though, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you could do it at the same time, but they'd have to put the base license in your basket first.
Gotcha. So the interest in bear hunting, why do you think that over the last, several years that this interest in bear hunting has grown so strong?
That's a good question. We've certainly, over the past 10 or so years, we've been seeing the northern lower population growing and expanding to areas where people haven't seen bears much in the past. So that might be kind of rekindling that somewhat. We certainly saw a spike after COVID, with potentially driven by that, people having some more time to get out in the woods. But we've definitely, over the years, we've seen an increase. We also have more people moving up to areas like in the northern lower peninsula, maybe portions of the UP, where we've just got, more people in those areas too. But otherwise, I don't know if it's just, hunting shows and other things that are kind of getting bear hunting out there into the view of hunters. A lot of hunters would like to see you guys in the department open it up more, though, to allow more bear tags. But I know, say, the Michigan Bear Hunters Association, I think, is still against that, and certainly the DNR is against it. What's the thinking here, Cody? Why not open it up and let as many people as possible enjoy that resource? Yeah, and we certainly try to do that to provide opportunity for folks. In the UP, it can be pretty easy to get a tag depending on what hunt period you're going for. And typically that's because there's a larger bear population, but also maybe less, people applying for each of those hunt periods. But in the northern lower, we have a very high success rate right now, even with a really short hunting season, where, in some units, it's 50% of hunters are tagging a bear. So when we've got that much success, even increasing licenses by a little bit results in, a significant amount of bears getting harvested more than previously. So as that, especially northern lower population, has been increasing and expanding, we have been increasing quotas and increasing opportunities too. We added a archery-only hunting season in the Baldwin and Gladwin units during the last regulation cycle. So we are trying to, expand opportunity and provide more opportunity for folks now that bears are increasing, but it's a balance. If we did just hand out tags over the counter, we'd probably have to cut the season significantly to make hunter success go down. It's significantly did not overharvest.
It's a balancing act. It's a chess game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hang tight, Cody. We got to take a break. We're talking to Cody Norton. He is the DNR's bear specialist, along with wolves and cougars. Wouldn't it be cool to somebody say, hey, what's your job? He says, well, I work for the DNR, and I am the head guy who works with Michigan bears, wolves, and cougars. That is pretty cool. We'll take a break. When we come back, more with Cody. I want to talk to him about the concept of a springtime hunt. Will we ever see one in Michigan? More about applying for a bear tag, including the party tag, or how does that all work? And we'll talk about bears in general. Coming up after the break, right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO, that's 1360 AM, and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC AM and FM, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Boning Archery. Boning has been a leader in the archery industry for 76 years now. They continue to come up with new products, new manufacturing processes. It's not a company that is sitting back and just resting and coasting on their name and their history. I mean, they started when Roland Boning invented Ferrule-Tite to glue broadheads to wooden arrow shafts, and these days they've come up with the highest tech archery gear you can think of. Boning makes just about everything for bows and arrows except bows and arrows, and they're based right here in Michigan. How cool is that? Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING, boning.com. As I am in the turkey woods this spring, and as I will be in the bear hunting woods this fall, certainly in Ontario and hopefully in Michigan, I will have Boning products on my setup. I encourage you to check them out, boning.com. Talking about bear hunting with Cody Norton of the Michigan DNR. He's a wildlife biologist. Cody, let's talk more about this process of applying. Go back a step. Will we ever see, in your opinion, in the near future, springtime Michigan bear hunt?
So, that has been brought up by some of our stakeholder groups. But at this point, I would say no. Our department leadership has said that they're not going to pursue that idea.
Okay. Talking more about the process of applying. There's is it a party system or a buddy system where you can apply for multiple people? What's the correct term there, Cody?
Yeah, I think we call it a hunt party. I mean, different states call it different things, but yeah, that is available for folks that are looking to apply and want to make sure that their hunting buddies, get a tag too if they get one. You can apply with it can be a group of up to 4 people, and the person with the lowest number of preference points is basically that preference point total gets applied to the entire group.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. If somebody's got 3 points and somebody's got 5, the group as a whole will show 3 points.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. And there are other states where they average the number of points. This is just kind of what's been done in Michigan. And also, if somebody is applying that's a non-resident, then the entire group gets the non-resident designation too.
And speaking of this point system, I didn't even realize this existed until a couple of years ago. But you guys at the department have put out a chart that makes it very clear how many points, at least in the past, have been needed for a given bear management unit and a given season. I find this very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had talked about it a little, not too long ago, Mike, for the tag you're interested in drawing. But, for most folks, if you look in the Bear Digest, there's a table that will have a number range for the number of preference points required the previous year. And I know, we get confusion about that sometimes. Basically, the higher number in that table is the number of preference points that people had where 100% of the applicants with that number of preference points got a tag. And then the lower number in that range is for folks that had that number of preference points, some percentage of them got drawn for that tag. But then we do have more detailed information if people reach out to us. With our website migration, it's not up yet. But if they reach out to me, I can certainly try to fill them in.
Yeah, excellent. Some of these point totals are crazy, like Drummond Island, more than 20 points, which means 20 years, Cody. We might, if we really wanted to hunt Drummond Island, it would take us 20 years or so to get a tag.
Yes. And Drummond is a really unique situation where we give out 5 or 6 tags each year. We actually just bumped that up to 6 because the success rate finally dropped below 100% for a few years. So pretty much if you get a tag on Drummond, I mean, your folks have been almost guaranteed to get a bear in the past. But yeah, it's such a small area, and trying to be careful with how many bears we're harvesting.
And you were talking about, a conversation you and I had a few weeks ago about the Newberry district. I want to hunt Newberry because I want to hunt with my buddy, Johnny Bowler, who was a bear guide there. It takes 9 or 10, if I remember, I'm not looking at the chart right now, points to get the first season. I like to bear hunt too much to wait 10 years for a tag. And then you made me aware that, listen, there's a third season there, and you can get a tag with 1 point, which means basically every other year. I don't want to say you're guaranteed, but the odds look very good in a situation like that I can bear hunt every other year.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, I mean, if more applicants apply or fewer, or if the license quota changes, that tweaks a little bit. But it's been pretty consistent for Newberry third season, being in that, a small sliver of folks applying with 0 points, might be able to get a tag. But in recent years, you've been about guaranteed with 1 point, which is nice. And that's, I hunted last year. Yeah, I hunted last year in the Gwynn unit and got a second season tag and harvested a bear the opening day of my season.
Nice.
So
nice.
I know you've been successful up there, I think, in Newberry third season. So it gives you a lot more, the success rate's a lot lower, but it gets you out in the woods hunting bears a lot more often.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was my next point. The thing you have to keep in mind with these later seasons is that in general, it's going to be a tougher hunt. The success rate is going to go down. So unless you've got an in or a guy or you're a local or something, just be prepared that the third season is probably not going to look like the first season as far as hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people that hold out and wait, those extra 8 years to get a first season Newberry tag, a lot of them are hoping to hunt those first 5 days if they're a bait hunter, without hound hunters out there running. So that's kind of a big push for some folks. For me and obviously for you, we're okay with hounds running and being out in the woods and sharing the woods with them and still being able to bear hunt.
There is, and I hate to bring it up, but there it is, a little bit of I don't want to say controversy, but sometimes some ruffled feathers between the bait hunters and the bear hunters. Is that just the way of the world, Cody? Is there anything we can do about that these days?
Yeah, at our last bear forum meeting, kind of part of this regulation cycle that we're in the middle of for bears, we're talking about some different options. I think the northern lower is typically where there's, maybe more conflicts or perceived conflicts between bait hunters, hound hunters, and then we've also got the Liberty hunt thrown in there. So we're trying to kind of tweak things and reduce, any conflict as much as we possibly can. But we also want to provide, a lot of opportunity for folks, whether they're hunting over bait or hunting with dogs or some other way, to be out in the woods, a long time when they do draw a tag.
I think a lot of people have a misconception, too, about the size of bears. How big is the average Michigan black bear taken during our season?
Yeah, average for actual harvested bears, I'd say, is right around 130 pounds. We don't weigh every bear that comes in, so some check stations do, some don't. It's kind of hard to require volunteer stations to do that. But yeah, it's actually quite a bit smaller than most people would probably expect. In the northern lower, I'd say it's a little bit higher than that, just because people are usually waiting a little longer and being selective, and that's a pretty solid population. but yeah, I think it's a little surprising. Of course, every year it seems we're harvesting some in the 500-pound range, and
I know, that's crazy.
maybe even one, tipping the scales over 600. So there are some really nice bears out there too.
Have you ever seen a bear that size, over 500 pounds, in your research?
We had one in Escanaba that we collared that we caught in a foot snare that was 460 pounds in the spring. So that bear, he actually was so big he slipped his collar pretty quick because he had a linebacker's neck. But even in research, I mean, 250 to 300. I mean, that's a big bear. And those are generally what we're seeing. Those 500 plus are pretty unique. Pretty special bears. And there is mandatory check-in for bears harvested in Michigan, correct? Yes. Every single bear that gets harvested needs to go to a check station. Yep. And why? What do you do with that info? Sure. So, each bear will get a seal attached to the pelt, so that makes sure that the bear was legally harvested when you take it to a taxidermist or send it to a tannery or anything like that. And then we'll pull a tooth, which helps us with actually estimating the age of the bear. And anyone that harvested a bear, last year on June 1st can go on our website at michigan.gov/DNR lab and actually look up the estimated age of their bear, which is kind of neat. We try to do that for hunters that are interested. But that helps us, know what the age breakdown is of the harvest. Of course, then we also get the sex of the bear, whether it's a male or female. We can look at ratios of that. And then we've had some research projects going on in recent years, too, where we're looking at bear diet and then trying to create a new way of estimating the bear population in the Upper Peninsula as well. So we've been taking tissue samples, hair samples, things like that, where I think we're actually going to be able to back off on that a bit this year. So it helps us out a lot with managing the bear population. I got to switch gears on you just a little bit, Cody. I know that you don't deal with elk specifically, but you are familiar with the elk drawing process. It's a little different than the bear tag process, right? Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, same application period, things like that. But instead of using preference points, you basically get a chance each time you apply. And each year that you're unsuccessful, you retain those previous chances. So with preference points for bears, you're starting out with 0 your first year. With elk, you're starting out with 1 chance. So that's something that trips people up a lot. And instead of, I've gotten this many chances, how many do I need to be guaranteed an elk tag? The chances work totally different than preference points. So you're basically getting another, slip of paper with your name thrown in the hat each year that you apply for elk. And so it makes your odds better, but you're never guaranteed to, draw one. Well, and you can apply for both Michigan bear or elk tags at the website michigan.gov/DNR. You can apply at any licensed agent as well. And Cody, I can't wait to hear how your trip up to White River to hunt with Ron St. Louis goes. I have really enjoyed it up there, and I'm hoping you enjoy it just half as much. You'll have a great time. Absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to it. All right. Send me a picture of your bear. All right. Sounds good, Mike. All right, Cody. Good luck, and appreciate your time. Cody Norton, for the Michigan DNR, he's the guy in charge of bear and wolves and cougars as well. Michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about avian flu right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. That's mucc.org, mucc.org. And a reminder,
If you use the promo code Mike, all caps MIKE, you can save 25% on your first time signing up for your MUCC membership. I want to turn our attention now to something that's been in the news a lot here in Michigan. But to be honest with you, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, I haven't paid much attention to it. Bird flu, avian flu. I don't even know what the correct term for it is. Dr. Megan Moriarty, though, has been working very closely with us with this, and she joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk more. Doctor, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for asking. So tell me, is it bird flu, is it avian flu, or does it matter?
All of those terms can be used. It's called avian influenza is the scientific term for it, but bird flu or avian flu, they all mean the same thing.
So is it a real legitimate problem, or is this something the news got a hold of and blew it out of proportion?
Yeah, I think that avian influenza is a big deal right now because we are experiencing an outbreak throughout North America of the highly pathogenic version of avian influenza. So the acronym is HPAI, and it really is an important thing that's happening throughout North America right now because it is impacting a lot of wild birds as well as domestic birds. And it really is covering most of the United States at this point, and we are seeing large numbers of mortality of domestic birds and wild birds as well.
Certain species of birds, or is it across the whole gamut?
That's a great question. For wild birds, there are some particularly susceptible groups of birds. So we generally think of waterfowl, so ducks, geese, and swans have been particularly impacted, and then raptors have also been are quite sensitive to the HPAI virus, and we've seen large numbers of die-offs of various members of the raptor family, so a lot of owls, eagles, and hawks, and falcons. Oh. And then the third group of birds are scavengers. So turkey vultures have been impacted, some crows and various corvids and animals that may be eating dead waterfowl that could have died of HPAI. So those are the three groups of wild birds that seem to be especially sensitive to the virus.
So the question is, can we do anything about this?
That's a great question. There are some things that people can do to try to limit the spread of this virus, of this disease. I think the most important thing is for people to be especially careful if they have domestic birds at home. So if people have backyard poultry, turkey or chickens or ducks, those birds really need to be protected from this virus. And the best way to do that is to prevent interaction between wild birds and domestic birds. So that means bringing your domestic birds inside or making sure they have a roof overhead, and then making sure their feed and their water is separate from wild birds, such that wild birds don't have access.
I even
so those are yeah.
Well, I even heard. I apologize. I even heard talk of people take down your bird feeders. Is it gone to that extent? Will that do anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. The bird feeder recommendation at this point is that if people really want to do everything they can to try to limit the spread of this virus, then taking down bird feeders could potentially help. The reason is that congregations of multiple species of birds and, having a lot of birds all in the same concentrated area, those are the perfect recipe for spreading this virus, because the best way that it's transmitted is directly from one bird to another, or also indirectly with birds touching contaminated surfaces like bird feeders. Yeah. A lot of birds that frequent bird feeders, like songbirds, are fortunately a lower risk group of birds. So passerines tend to not have as high mortality levels, and they tend to not test positive as frequently for HPAI. So luckily they're a lower risk group, but it is important to remember that any bird is potentially susceptible to highly pathogenic avian influenza. So I think the main recommendation is if people have bird feeders and they really want to do everything they can certainly take them down temporarily until this outbreak passes. And if people are going to leave bird feeders up, then we ask that they are really careful with disinfection and cleaning up spilled bird seed. And then if people do have domestic birds on their premises and they also have a bird feeder, then in those instances, I think out of an abundance of caution, it really is recommended to take bird feeders down, again, just to really do everything we can to protect domestic birds as well.
Doctor, you have been very helpful. I appreciate your time. More details at the website, michigan.gov/DNR. Dr. Megan Moriarty, thank you for shedding some light on this, and I'll let you get along with your day.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment, I'll tell you more after the break. It's interesting and kind of creepy at the same time. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Manistee on WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. A reminder, the way this segment works is this is your chance to send me a question that you would like to hear addressed on the air here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. It could be something you want me to answer directly, or you're looking for information from somebody else, DNR, MUCC, something like that. The best way to get these questions to me is to send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And that's where this question comes from. Unfortunately, the person didn't give me their name, and I don't want to read their email address on the air. So I will ask you this. If you send me a question, please give me your name, just so I know who to thank and so I know who I'm talking to. But this question comes in via email. It says, hey, Mike, the DNR is doing Cwd testing by cutting off heads of road-killed deer in and around Kalamazoo, Allegan, and Branch counties. He said, I'm assuming it's a guy, I know you answered a question before saying it's the road commissioner's responsibility to remove dead animals on the road. So why is the DNR not teaming up with them and having them removed once they do their test, or just take the entire dead deer and test them at a DNR facility? He says seeing all those dead deer is bad enough, but headless ones is a whole nother level of eerie. Man. Yeah, that would be interesting. So I reached out to the DNR. In fact, I got a response from Ed Golder, the head PR guy at the DNR. He says, Mike, we collected deer heads through a contractor from road-killed deer from October 2021 through March of 2022 in Allegan, Kalamazoo, Van Buren, Cass, St. Joseph, and Branch counties. These deer heads were opportunistically collected in cooperation with the DNR to be tested for CWD and or bovine tuberculosis. Normally, whole carcasses are removed when we do this kind of surveillance. However, that didn't happen in this case. We collected over 200 heads, which helped inform our disease management efforts. Collection efforts have been paused, but many resume again later. Typically, as you know, we collect deer heads for testing at DNR check stations. We'll sometimes collect deer heads for testing from roadkill to supplement deer check stations. So Ed is saying, look, it was kind of a mistake. He said, normally whole carcasses are removed when we do this kind of surveillance. However, that didn't happen in this case. And I'm not blaming anybody. Things happen. But it is an answer to the question of why were those headless deer left out there? That would be weird, isn't it? I always find it kind of sad. And here in Michigan, we see this all the time, right? You're driving down the road. I don't care if it's a freeway or a 2-lane back road. You're going to see dead deer. And every time I see that, I think, well, what a shame. Because number one, the resource has been wasted. Somebody hit that animal with their car, which damaged the vehicle. And there's always the potential that somebody's going to get hurt in an accident like that, right? I mean, there are fatal car-deer accidents every year. That's always one of my go-to responses when people say, well, I don't know if we need deer hunting. If we didn't have deer hunting in Michigan, every Michigan roadway would be like running a gauntlet from an hour before sunset through all night long and an hour after sunrise. You know, deer hunting helps keep those numbers down. Now, this whole question of CWD and bovine tuberculosis and avian flu, like we were talking about in the previous segment with Dr. Moriarty. You know, these are specters hanging over the heads of everybody in Michigan who loves wildlife, conservation, hunting, fishing. And you never know how seriously to take them. Look at the first hour talking with Keith DeWald. He put one post out there showing a discolored walleye saying, if you find another one, let us know so we can get it tested. And the social media people jumped on it and said, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. You know, we have a tendency to grab onto something and blow it out of proportion. Well, especially the news people and social media. So, and again, I wish I knew your name so I could thank you for this question about leaving headless deer along the roadways in southwest Michigan. It's a great question. And why did it happen? Ed Golder from the DNR said, well, it was kind of an oversight. And I appreciate your candor there, Ed. Appreciate that very much. If you would like to send me a question, any type of a question, I'd love to hear from you, but please give me your name, again, so I know who to thank and so I know who I'm talking with. Send that email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Tell me what your question is, and I'll see if I can get an answer. Sometimes these answers are very quick and obvious. Sometimes it's something I can answer myself. Oftentimes I have to go and do a little research, and that might take a little while. So if you don't hear your question on the air right away, please be patient. If you think somehow fell through the cracks, and sometimes they do, send me a second email with a title line, Hey Stupid. That gets my attention. But don't send me the first email starting out, Hey Stupid, because you're probably going to go to the bottom of the list at that point. And as always, a thanks to our friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. SecurityCU.org, SecurityCU.org. We'll take a break. When we come back, kind of following up on this whole thing with the topic of deer farming here in Michigan. It's a big business. We'll talk with Dan Harrington and, of course, wild game chef Dave Minar coming up in Hour 3 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network. More than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan. The show, of course, is also available as a podcast, but I always want to encourage you, if you can, to listen to the radio show on your local radio station. But isn't it nice to know that there is a podcast version out there? 3 hours, here every week for 3 hours, talking about the great outdoors. I mean, we talk about, I'd like to think, well, I almost said all aspects of the outdoors here, but we don't. Like, I don't talk about hiking or bicycling, or sailing, or golf. Not that those aren't viable outdoor activities. But I tend to concentrate on the more consumptive end of the outdoors. Hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and all of these things that are in some ways under attack, right? Nobody's trying to take away anybody's right to, I don't know, if you hear that in the background, we've got the EAS, the Emergency Alert System. There's a storm coming through right now. So it's not, listen, it's not in your neck of the woods, okay? It's recorded a couple of days ago. You're safe. Don't go run into your basement. But we deal with the more consumptive end of the outdoors, things that people, I don't know, that some folks want to take away from us. So that's what I tend to concentrate on. This time around, though, in this hour of the show, something I've never, ever talked about before and never even thought of talking about. Let me give you a little background here. As a kid growing up on the west side of the state, northern Kent County, I grew up on a farm, and we raised cows. We raised cattle. Out in the woods around the farm, there were deer. And I never in my mind thought of combining those two, of raising deer. But it's a very big and very viable industry here in Michigan. Dan Harrington knows this business inside and out. He's a member of the United Deer Farmers of Michigan. Their website, UnitedDeerFarmersOfMichigan.com, UnitedDeerFarmersOfMichigan.com, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Dan, welcome to the show. Appreciate your time. How are you?
I'm well. Yourself?
Hey, I'm doing real good today. Real good. Appreciate it. So listen, tell me a little bit about deer farming in Michigan. How big of a deal is it?
Well, it's a pretty big deal. I've only been in about 5 years, but when I got introduced to it, I'm like most, didn't really even know it existed. And now come to find out, it's about a $90 million a year industry in Michigan.
Wow.
We have over approximately 350 farms, both ranches and breeding facilities. And I think total, they estimate, of course, that there's 22,000 captive deer behind fences.
What got you into it?
Well, I've been, of course, like most of your listeners, started as a child with my father hunting and trapping and fishing and, deer hunting, of course, is huge in the UP, national holiday. And and I have been accumulating some property, and I spend most of my free time planting food plots and feeding deer and all that good stuff. And I had never been too successful at raising big deer. So one day of Christmas time, my son showed me a picture of a buck, and I'm like, that isn't even real. That's just the internet. They can do anything on there. And as it turns out, sure as can be, it was a live living deer on a facility in Missouri. And I started researching it, and my wife says, well, next thing you know, I'm in the middle of it. So, and it's a industry that's basically run by people who couldn't get enough deer in their life through just hunting, so they've gone to the next step and started raising them themselves.
Oh. And like your facility there, Dan, is it a high fence hunting facility, or is it a straight up deer farm?
No, it's just a deer farm. I just raise deer. That part of the industry is very huge in Michigan, but aside from selling them deer, I'm not really involved with that side of the industry. I'm just involved with the side that we're just raising big deer.
And then what do you do with those animals?
Most of those, they either go to other breeders, or actually I got a batch going now to Ames, Iowa for research. And it's the second time we've sent deer there to the big USDA facility there for CWD research.
Well, listen.
And,
okay, sorry to interrupt, but you bring up CWD, and as I'm just in the studio this morning, there's a story on MLive, and I told you I was going to talk about this very briefly, that a single captive white-tailed deer at a farm in Mecosta County tested positive for CWD. And as you know, there have been several cases across the state since 2008 or so in the deer farms. How big a concern is that, Dan?
Oh, it's a huge concern for deer farmers. I mean, if you have a positive, you're done. They come kill all your deer and you're out of business. And most of us have a ton of money invested in our facilities and our deer. And it's more than that. We're attached to our deer, sort of, I mean, it's like any other it isn't quite a pet, but it's close. I mean, we spend every day. You know, if you were a dairy farmer, you get
Sure.
to know all those cows and who they are, and who their mom and dad were, and the whole 9 yards. But so it's a big concern for us as an industry, and you know, that core area. That I think that positive was in the core area where, you know, there's been, you know, quite a few cases, like you said, several in facilities, but more so in the wild. And, you know, as an industry, especially in Michigan, we're very active in CWD research. We've spent most of our money, quite frankly, over the last 5 or 6 years in doing research on these facilities. And pretty much all of them we've gone into and are taking pretty much a different approach than what's been taken. You know, CWD's been around for 60-some years, and we've had, or I should say, they've had, the powers that be have had little success in solving it, as we know. And so we've sort of taken some different approaches and actually are having pretty good success finding remedies to it.
Dan, I want to make sure what I understand what you're saying here is, and I'll go back here a step. Some Michigan hunters, at least early on, looked at the deer farms, the captive deer operations, as a source maybe for CWD, and you're saying that that's not the case. Not only that you guys, the breeders, think you're ahead of the curve maybe in trying to find a solution for the problem?
Oh, absolutely, and it's sort of exciting. I have been since I started pretty active. I mean, it's a long story, but, you know, when I first started deer farming, I went to Wisconsin events because I'm in UP and I'm closer to Green Bay than I am to the bridge even. But so I went to lots of Wisconsin events, and they had CWD, you know, in Wisconsin for quite some time, and that's all they talked about, and it was sort of a downer going there, whereas Michigan was always upbeat, you know, and you want to just talk about raising deer and lie about how big your bucks are. but you know, and then all of a sudden Michigan got CWD, and pretty much, you know, they're on the same downer a little bit, not so bad as Wisconsin. But so a good buddy of mine, Dennis Simpson, and I have been doing pretty extensive work with CWD. And, you know, there's numerous things that have come from that. And the biggest one really wasn't us. We're just sort of following through on it. But they've isolated 5 different genotypes, chromosome genotypes, that are resistant, if not immune to getting CWD. And, you know, Dr. Haley had done that research, and deer farmers in Michigan have followed through on it quite a bit with actually putting it into practice. And I guess the proof will be in the pudding, but as it turns out right now, we have several research projects that are trying to prove that out. One in Apple Creek in Wisconsin. We have a big one, multi-year project going on in Ames, Iowa to test the theory. And where else we got? But so we've been doing quite a bit of research on it to see if it actually works. In theory, it does. And it's similar to scabies and sheep, basically, and they're finding now that maybe CWD and scabies are very, very similar, if not the same. And so what we've taken is that way they got rid of scabies and sheep, and we're basically doing the same thing in white-tailed deer.
Well, that's very interesting. Listen, I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, but can you stick around for a few more minutes, Dan?
Sure.
Wonderful. We'll continue our conversation with Dan Harrington. He's a deer farmer in the UP. He's a member of the United Deer Farmers of Michigan, their website, uniteddeerfarmersofmichigan.com. And Dan contacted me, and he said, Mike, hey, I was listening to your show there in the UP, and I'd like to get the word out about deer farming in Michigan. And I thought about it and thought, yeah, this is kind of actually a very interesting topic because it's something we've never talked about before. I think in some ways that deer farmers, and I'm maybe overstepping my bounds here, but I think in some ways maybe deer farmers have been looked down on by some groups in the past when we first heard about CWD and captive herds. And then there's this whole stigma of, going behind a fence to shoot a buck. Don't get me started on that one. That is, listen, I'll follow up on that part of it after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in, let's go to Traverse City as well, WTCM 580 AM. That's just a couple of our more than 30 affiliates, by the way. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Michigan-based VersaSkins, a very unique concept. Why spend all this money on different camo patterned hunting gear when you can buy one set of VersaSkins and snap on and zip on the outer liner? You can go from blaze orange to snow camo to springtime camo. I mean, it's wonderful. The website versaskins.com, versaskins.com. And a couple of days ago, before the weather turned, when I was turkey hunting on a really, really cold morning, I thought, I got to grab the warmest thing I've got. And guess what it was? It was my VersaSkins, and it was absolutely wonderful. Very well made, cool concept, Michigan-based. You know I love that. Check them out online at versaskins.com. I want to continue my conversation, too, with Dan Harrington of the United Deer Farmers of Michigan, but I want to follow up on something that I started to get into before the break. The concept of high-fence deer hunting. I support it completely. I have no desire myself to do it. I'll tell you that right now. It's not something I want to do, but if somebody else wants to do it, God bless them. In this world, there are too many groups and people and individuals trying to judge others based on your morals and ethics. The thing about high fence hunting is it is completely legal. And as long as it's legal, I am going to support any fellow hunter's activities. The thing about high fence hunting is that person, even though they may not buy a license, they're still buying gear, probably high-end gear, and more importantly, they identify themselves as a hunter. So when a hunting-related question comes up on the ballot, on the polls, this person will vote in solidarity with us as a hunter. Just because they choose to go behind a fence doesn't make them anything less than somebody who hunts on the outside. So that's my take on that. And the reason I bring it up, we're talking with Dan Harrington, who is a deer farmer and a member of United Deer Farmers of Michigan, the website uniteddeerfarmersofmichigan.com. So, Dan, listen, I wanted to put that out there right away. But again, your operation is not a high fence hunting operation. You are raising deer for that purpose and others as well, correct?
Yeah. I'm only a breeding facility, and I'm sort of with you on exactly what you said about the hunting preserves. I mean, I support them 100%. I'm not sure I would do it myself, but, to each their own. And quite frankly, I'll tell you a story about when I first learned about deer farming. Actually a ranch. I was doing predator control work for a couple of ranches, and we trapped in those basically all winter. And one was, there was two of them, they're each a square mile, and the other one was a little smaller. And you know that, I told my brother on numerous occasions we were down there trapping, I wouldn't even hunt in this place, there's so little deer sign. So you think there's going to be deer running all over, and it's just like shooting them in a barrel. But basically, and the owner of the one told me forever, because he told me, quit buying land, Dan, and start buying fence, because his contention, and which is true, is basically the fence just allows you to manage those deer the way you want to manage them. If you want to shoot spike horns, you can shoot spike horns. If you want to only shoot 12-pointers, you only shoot 12-pointers. And it just gives you a control how, to manage things, the way you're sort of pushing someone else to do it for you in the wild. So,
as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, it's an interesting concept for me to try to wrap my brain around, because I think of deer as wild animals, and the concept of trying to grow them and breed them, it's hard for me to relate to. Is raising deer in some ways just like raising cattle? It's just a different critter?
It is a little different. I raised fox and mink, so they were wild animals basically too, so I guess my perspective might be a little different than raising cows. But, we do bottle feed some does, so those get to be pets. And we feed them enough treats that, just like the deer in your backyard, if you give them enough treats, they'll come up and eat from you, so I don't know that it's the same as raising cattle, but it's the number one growing agricultural activity in this country. So I guess if we listen to the Department of Ag, it's the same. So,
hold on. You said deer farming is like the number one or fastest growing type of agriculture in the country?
It is. I mean,
and I didn't even realize.
Deer. You know that, Mike. I mean, they love deer.
Yeah, people do love deer. Exactly, people do love deer. Yeah. And I guess the concept.
This is just the way to do it 365 days a year.
Yeah, I'm starting to figure out where you're coming from, Dan. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. Hey, like my buddy, wild game chef Dave Minar, who will be on here in the show shortly. He does a lot of venison recipes. Of course, I mean, do you or deer farmers like you? Do you also supply restaurants and grocery stores and stuff like that with venison as well?
We do. Yeah. So it's not the major, of course. The major thing we want to do is supply bucks, which there aren't near enough to supply the ranches in Michigan right now, and or the hunting facilities. But we do supply the meat market as well.
So there's a shortage of big whitetail bucks.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I know there is in the wild because I never see them.
Not the wild.
Exactly.
So there you go. You even got shortage of them behind fences.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So what does it take? What's involved in starting a deer farming operation? Obviously, you got to have land, first of all.
Yeah, and not a lot. The number one group that raises whitetail deer in the country are Amish, because you can do it with little equipment and on small, basically not expensive parcels. So if you got 4 acres in a corner of your nice row crop farm and you think it's just wasted, or if you're not bow hunting there already or whatever, you can turn that into a deer farm. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the best farmland. It can be just about any property. I've seen deer farms on the side of hills. So that's first thing. Like you said, you got to find some land. Next thing is you got to get approval from, unfortunately, 2 branches of government in Michigan, because the DNR is actually in charge of the fences. They want to make sure that no deer escape, get into the wild. And although it wouldn't hurt, I can tell you that. But then you also got the Department of Agriculture, which is involved, and they have to approve the whole layout and the facility plan and everything. So there is a little paperwork to get started, and actually some paperwork once you get into it, because deer farms are sort of highly regulated. We have to TB test on a regular basis and CWD test every deer that dies. So they do monitor us after fact sort of closely.
You say kind of in jest that it wouldn't hurt, if a few of those bucks got out.
Yeah.
But aren't the genetics, the genes of your captive bucks and our wild bucks? I mean, yours, they get special treatment, they get special feed, they get to live longer. But are they genetically different than our bucks in the wild here in Michigan?
No, they're the same genetics. The thing is, we've just taken it to the next level. There's actually similar to, AKC dog registry. There's a deer registry where, we DNA all our deer and keep track of which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, which ones produce big bucks. And they've been highly, we artificially inseminate too. Artificial insemination is pretty common. So if there's a giant buck in Missouri and I want to breed with him, I buy semen and hopefully I can grow a buck that big. So it's and quite frankly, people ask me all the time, what do you feed those deer? Well, I feed them probably less what you feed your wild deer. I mean, I just have a ration of oats and a slight amount of corn, because you don't want to feed over 25% for all you deer hunters out there. They ask me that all the time. Corn they love it, but you should keep it to a maximum of 25%, and then a little bit of mineral pellet in there, and sometimes some sunflower seeds, sometimes a little soybeans. But in the winter, I only feed a 12% protein, and in the summer, a 16% protein. So it isn't the feed; it's all about the genetics.
Dan, why do you caution against feeding too much corn? What does that do?
Causes something called acidosis, which acidifies the system, and once you got an acidified system, disease is much more vulnerable to disease.
So
they always talked about it before, and I always wondered why, but that's the reason. Yeah.
Well, I would bet once you get into this whole concept, this process of deer farming, you learn more about deer than probably the average whitetail hunter knows.
Absolutely. You want to know the thing that astonishes me the most is they can't see.
What?
And you're taught that as a deer hunter when I was a kid, they can see movement, but they can't see distinguish things. So we feed them peanuts for treats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they'll eat them out of your hands, most of them. But when you throw them on the ground, they can't see where they are. They have to sniff them out.
Wow.
And even when you're feeding them peanuts, I caution people, keep your fingers together and just put the peanut or stick the peanut just because they'll grab your finger, not to take a bite, but they can't tell your finger from a peanut. And the funniest thing is when you throw them on the ground, they can be right in front of them, and they do not see those things. They have to sniff them out. So
you're talking about eyesight like I figure bears have,
Yeah. I mean, maybe worse than bears.
Wow.
So that was sort of amazing. But yeah, you do learn a ton from just being around them, what they like, what they don't like, and I know they do not like heat at all, and they don't mind cold. So, because on these hot days, like we're having our first 2 in the UP right now, they just do not get up until it gets cooled down in the evening. So
I could learn a lot about deer hunting just by hanging around your place, Dan.
Probably could. It is a very educated. Well, it's a micro laboratory of the outdoors, and that's one of the reasons we're going to solve CWD there, because we can try this and try that and see what happens, eh? We've actually experimented a lot with feed in CWD because, quite frankly, there's a pretty good chance CWD goes back to glyphosate, and we're basically poisoning those deer.
When I tell you what, when you're getting over my head, but when you start talking about solving CWD in captive Michigan deer farms, you've got my attention. Dan, listen, I appreciate you reaching out to me, Dan Harrington, and giving me a heads up on this, because I was completely ignorant to it, so I appreciate you enlightening me.
Sure thing.
Dan Harrington, the pleasure's been mine, of the United Deer Farmers of Michigan, the website, UnitedDeerFarmersOfMichigan.com, pretty self-explanatory website, UnitedDeerFarmersOfMichigan.com to learn more about this group, and I appreciate Dan's time. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, a few more semi-closing thoughts before we wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Dave Minar. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. Once again, we're going down this West Michigan coastline. You can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 and in Muskegon, WKBZ 1090 AM. Let's wrap it up by jumping over to the east side of the state. Let's go to Saginaw, WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I am in the studios of WSGW right now, one small corner of the building, as the first real thunderstorms of the season kind of bouncing around us here. I'm in here. I feel safe because I'm in here with Pat Johnston, who's doing a wonderful job. He's just, he'll protect us in here. He'll keep an eye on things. And I appreciate that, Pat. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by my friends at Reeder Landscaping. Reeder can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reeder create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me, to be honest with you. They've done a lot of work for me. Very conscientious. The guys who come over are always hardworking. They want to do a good job. They want to do it right the first time. What more can you ask? When you bring somebody into your house or on your property, there is a certain expectation that we, as homeowners, as customers have, and Reeder has never let me down. I would encourage you to check them out online at reederlandscaping.com. That's reederlandscaping.com. And Paul Reeder, if you're listening, I've got another project I have in mind. I'll be reaching out to you to see what we can do there. I found the conversation with Dan Harrington very interesting. I mean, honestly, I didn't. My exposure to deer farming has been so minimal. I'm really very ignorant to the topic. And honestly, at first blush, I'm kind of like, well, that doesn't seem right. Again, because I go back to my background of we raised cows and the deer were out in the woods. Isn't it somehow an affront to Mother Nature to start raising deer? But no, really it's not. I mean, somebody has property, they can do whatever they want legally, right? So, Dan, I appreciate you bringing us up to speed on that. I really do. And Dan's a guy I'm going to stay in touch with because I just, especially, and he's brought this up to me several times off the air and again during our radio conversation, that they feel very confident that they are on the right track to addressing this whole CWD, chronic wasting disease issue. Now, if they can do that, if the deer farmers, because they have a captive herd that they're working with and studying and they can take out all the variables, if they could find, I hate to use the word cure, but if they could find something that would fix the CWD problem, the deer farmers would suddenly become the most popular people in the deer hunting world. So I wish them luck on that. Oh, so what else is going on? Oh, the Goose Fence. The Goose Fence at the Avery property, the Avery house. As I've said before, we have a pond behind our house that is absolutely beautiful. It's got ducks and geese and muskrats and fish and deer, and it's nice, really nice, except for those stupid, big, giant flying rats that some people call geese. Honestly, I hate those things. I don't mind them when I see them flying overhead or when I see them out in the field or out in the water, but when I see them in my backyard, I absolutely hate those things. And now they've got the babies. They've got the goslings up in the yard. So they're teaching the goslings to come up in the yard and eat the grass and then leave a mess. I've had several people, after bemoaning my fate here on the radio show, I've had several people offer some very good suggestions. Put decoys out there. Put an owl decoy out there. Put a coyote decoy out there. Well, that doesn't work. Put up a string or a fishing line or a binder twine or something. You know, put up one line about 6 inches off the ground. They won't cross it. Oh, yes, they will. They'll go over it, under it, and through it. Okay, well then try 2. Nah, that doesn't work. Well then try 3. No, that doesn't work either. Well, use this spray that makes your grass taste bad, which I find out is now banned in Michigan. So that's not an option. The only other option would be, yes, get a dog. Get a dog to run them out of the yard. Well, I love dogs, but we don't want a dog. So that's not an option. So what do we go back to? A couple of years ago, I found this land. It's green, 2-foot tall landscaping type, snow type fence. And I put that up. And guess what? It works. Well, Avery, it's only 2 feet tall. You know geese can fly, right? Yeah, I know geese can fly, but they won't fly over it. So by the time you hear the show this weekend, that fence will be up, and I'll be happy to keep those, again, big, giant flying. Seagulls are flying rats. Geese are giant flying rats, in my opinion. Why don't you shoot them? Well, for one thing, it's not season right now. And for another thing, I live just inside the city limit. And Rob, the police officer who lives down the street, even though he probably doesn't like the geese, probably would come knocking on my door if he heard a couple of shotgun blasts. Maybe I should use a bow. That's quieter. Nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm just kidding. You know, I'm not going to go out and intentionally break a fish or game law. Although I'll tell you this, though, and I've said this many times before, too. If you spend enough time in the outdoors, hunting or fishing, I believe you will unintentionally, sooner or later, break a fish or game law. It's like driving, right? When you drive, you may not intend to go out and break a law, but you're probably going to sneak a couple miles over the speed limit. You might not come to a complete stop. You might not use your turn signal. Okay, so it's going to happen. Again, if you spend enough time hunting or fishing, you're not a violator. You didn't go out with the intent to violate. but sooner or later you will unintentionally break, hopefully, a minor fish or game law, and hopefully nobody will know it but you, and you can self-correct, and you won't have to have a visit from the folks in green. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine, and thank you for joining me on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Wouldn't be possible to be on the air for this long and to still be on the air and still having fun without you. Also wouldn't be possible without the guests I have here on the show. I think I've got a pretty good record of coming up with some interesting guests over the years. And one guy who is interesting and has been with me over many, many years, my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. And he helps me wrap up each week's show. And guess what? He's here once again. David, welcome back. How are you, buddy?
Good. Thanks for letting me be a part of such a great show. It's just been wonderful. Thank you.
It's been a good ride, but it ain't over yet.
No. I still got a kick left in me.
Me too. What do you got for us as far as a recipe this week, Dave?
Well, we're going to do a wild turkey steak, Florentine, and that means with spinach. It is, there's a lot of ingredients, but it's really well worth this. I'm telling you, you're going to just impress your family and or friends. So you need, this is going to be for 4 portions. You need about an 8 to 10 ounce breast steak per person. That's probably going to end up to be about an inch and a half thick when you cut it across the grain. A couple of beaten up eggs. You could add a little bit of milk to this. That would be fine. 1.5 to 2 cups of seasoned breadcrumbs. I like to put a little bit of basil, oregano, thyme, fresh grated black pepper. You can put a little Parmesan in there too. A medium onion diced fine. 2 to 4 cloves of garlic, depending on what your family or guests require, a lot more or less. It's up to them. I like to use shallots in this dish. It's kind of a cross between an onion and a garlic, and they're kind of purple, so you want to dice that up quite fine. Now, I use sambuca at the restaurant to do this particular dish with, but you can get airline bread, or them bottles, you know, the little 1-ouncers, anise or Denizette or any of them. The licorice flavor is what you're looking for. To me, Sambuca is the best, but the other ones are just fine too. A couple ounces of white wine, 12 ounces of sliced mushrooms thin, big package of spinach cleaned with no stems. You might even have to get 2 depending on if you're using the organic because they're a little smaller. 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. You need an 18-ounce pack of Swiss cheese sliced thin. A couple, 3-4 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese, and a bunch of green onions. You want to slice that thin because you're going to top this dish with that. A nice big dash of Worcestershire, which is going to give it some kick. And you could use white pepper or fresh grated black pepper, olive oil, and a little bit of flour. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure the breast is cleaned of all shot feathers or any bloodied meat, anything like that that's not going to be appealing to the eye. In between 2 sheets of plastic, pound them down to with a meat mallet about a half-inch thick or so. Break it out. Break the fibers up real good so it doesn't pucker up when you cook it. Dredge it in flour, beaten up eggs, and then pat some of the dry breadcrumbs on in a medium hot pan. Not too hot because this breading is going to burn real fast, and you really have to monitor this. So with a little bit of olive oil, brown the meat on both sides, place in an oven-proof baking dish with the oven on, preheated to 350 degrees while we're doing all the rest of this. And that's going to get the cooking process started. So you're going to wipe your pan out with a paper towel, and a small amount of olive oil. You're going to saute the onions, the garlic, shallots for just a little while to break up the flavor into this dish. Add the Sambuca or whatever kind of licorice flavored alcohol you're going to use. And you could add the white wine in, and you won't have to flambe it at this point unless you want that poof, when like we used to do for the show. Reduce it down about 3/4 volume. Add the mushrooms, cook it, add the Worcestershire sauce, the pepper, and the fresh spinach, and cover and steam it for just a little while. As it starts to reduce down a little bit, you can add the butter and cook down fast until it's kind of dry. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put equal piles of this spinach mixture on a baking sheet or a casserole, whatever you're going to use. Place the breast on top of each with a couple slices of Swiss cheese because they're going to be pretty good size. If you use pheasant or grouse, you're probably going to use only one slice of cheese. Nice sprinkle of Parmesan, please. Put in a hot oven until it's nicely melted. And that'll continue to cook that. And then you can top it with some fresh chopped chives or green onions, and a pasta would be great, or wild rice or fiddleheads. I see they're out now. And whatever side you like is going to go great with this because it's kind of mild meat, but the sauce is just flavorful like you can't believe. I recommend this dish highly.
Sounds absolutely wonderful. Now, if I could just shoot a bird, I could use the recipe.
I saw 2 nice toms yesterday, but they were a long way away.
That's what I've been seeing. I've been hearing a few and seeing them, but they haven't come within range yet. But, hey, we've still got time, Dave.
Yep.
Hey, what about the restaurant? I'd like to stop by and see you. How are things going?
Great. People are really out and about now. I think the COVID scare is kind of over a little bit. And the poor people that have passed from it, I feel bad for them. I've had family members go. And I think people are just out and about now. And there seems to be a lot of money out there. People are treating themselves to some great dishes made.
All right, David, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you next time. That's Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. Remember, you can always find me, the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and my email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.